He who overcomes himself is greater than he who conquers 1,000 men. Buddha. What if the very things you thought made you spiritual are the chains holding you back? Approval, happiness, certainty, they look like light, but they're cages dressed in gold. The truth is, the most awakened don't gain more, they quietly quit what everyone else clings to. In the next few minutes, you'll see why letting go unlocks more power than chasing ever could. Stay with me, because once you glimpse this, you'll never look at awakening the same way again. People often think approval is oxygen, like they can't live without it. But the moment awakening begins, that very air turns toxic. You notice how every smile, every like, every nod comes with invisible chains. Jung saw it clearly. What once felt like safety quickly becomes suffocation. Isn't it strange how what used to fuel you now feels like poison? The Hermetic masters whispered the same lesson. True authority doesn't come stamped by the crowd but rises like fire from within. Imagine holding a torch. It doesn't borrow light, it generates it. Yet how many keep their flame hidden, waiting for someone else to say, "Yes, you're allowed"? If reality begins in the mind, why keep asking others for permission to think? And if your mind carries eternity, why shrink for applause? Think of it this way. A performer on stage bends their act to the audience, while a true artist creates even when no one is watching. How much of your life has been a performance, tailored to keep others comfortable? It's exhausting to dance to music you didn't choose. What if the applause stopped today? Would your song still continue? Or would silence reveal the voice you've been hiding? Here's a practice. Close your eyes for 10 seconds, breathe in slowly, and picture a mirror floating before you. See every face that ever judged you fade away, until only your own gaze remains. That's the authority you've been chasing all along. If you felt even a flicker of peace in that moment, you've already glimpsed your inner law. Wouldn't you like to live from that place all the time? Now, I'll be direct. If this resonates, don't just sit back. Subscribe, save this, share it with someone stuck in the same prison, because this conversation matters more than another scroll through noise. You're here because part of you is tired of asking for keys you already hold. Approval isn't the door, it's the lock. And the lock only turns when you stop playing guard. Ready to see what illusion of specialness hides behind that lock? Because here's the paradox. The moment you quit chasing approval, the ego tries to lure you into another trap, convincing you that now you're chosen, better, more unique. It looks like freedom, but it's just another costume. And if you thought escaping approval was tricky, wait until you see how seductive the idea of being special really is. When approval no longer rules you, another subtle trick shows up. The ego whispers, "You're different, you're chosen." At first, it feels like freedom, but it's just a shinier cage. Think about it. How many spiritual paths get stuck right here, wrapped in the glow of superiority? You leave one prison only to decorate another. Isn't that the sneakiest trap of all? Specialness is seductive because it gives you an instant high, a rush of meaning. You walk into a room and feel above it all, as if only you see the truth. But the Hermetic masters warned, if you seek to stand taller than others, you're still measuring by their height. Jung called it inflation, when the ego steals the gold of the soul. Doesn't that explain why pride always collapses into loneliness? Look at nature. A flower blooms without asking if it's the rarest in the garden. It doesn't compare petals, it just fulfills its essence. That's the model of true awakening, being yourself without performance, without competition. When you catch yourself reaching for the title of special, ask, Am I blooming, or just posturing? What if real greatness is invisible because it doesn't need to be seen? Try this small practice. Sit still for a moment and feel your breath like waves moving in and out. Notice how your chest rises and falls the same way billions of people breathe. You're not above them, not below them, you're of the same ocean. That humility doesn't shrink you, it roots you. And once you taste it, doesn't it feel more solid than any fleeting ego rush? Here's the mid-roll tease. The step almost no one reveals is coming up next, and it's about the one mask nearly every seeker wears without noticing. Before that, if you're finding this valuable, hit the bell so you never miss when I share the next layer. You'll thank yourself later when a single line here saves you from years of wandering. So, can you see how being special is still just another mask? Because the world pushes a different disguise, one that looks innocent, even virtuous. The pressure to always shine, to radiate joy and positivity, no matter what's happening inside. It's called happiness, but really it's a mask. And learning to drop it is the real alchemy that transforms awakening into wholeness. Have you noticed how society demands constant smiles, as if joy is the only valid face of awakening? It's subtle, but the pressure to always be positive is everywhere, from social media captions to spiritual circles. The mask of happiness looks harmless, but it's heavy. Behind it, real feelings rot in silence. And doesn't pretending to glow eventually dim the inner flame? Hermetic wisdom never preached endless sunshine, it taught polarity. Joy and sorrow, peace and turmoil, they exist as pairs, inseparable as day and night. Jung echoed the same. Wholeness means holding both sides, not performing only one. Think of a piano, you wouldn't want just white keys. It's the tension between notes that makes music. So why deny the dark tones of your soul's song? Picture someone who's lost a loved one but feels guilty for grieving, forcing smiles so others think they're strong. That's the mask in action. But healing doesn't come from hiding pain, it comes from integrating it. The Kybalion says all opposites are just degrees of the same thing. Isn't it freeing to realize your sadness isn't failure, but simply another shade of love? Try this micro-practice. Close your eyes, inhale deeply, and let a memory of sorrow arise. Don't push it away. Feel its texture, like a storm cloud, and then exhale slowly, seeing that cloud dissolve into a wider sky. Notice how the sky never disappears, no matter how dark the weather. Doesn't that show you that happiness and sorrow are both temporary guests, while you are the sky itself? If this resonates, pause for a second and like this video. It tells the platform you want more of this kind of depth. More importantly, it tells yourself you're committed to dropping the mask. Because living unmasked isn't about glowing non-stop, it's about glowing honestly. And when you embody both shadow and light, doesn't life feel more alive than any forced grin? Which leads to the next illusion, one that feels safe but kills wisdom silently: certainty. The ego clings to answers the way a child clings to a blanket. Yet every true mystic warns, the unknown is where power breathes. So, are you ready to let go of false security and step into the spiral of mystery? Everyone craves certainty. It feels like safety, like solid ground beneath your feet. But awakening shows you that the ground was never solid to begin with. The ego clings to knowing, to fixed answers, to tidy boxes that label reality. Yet Thoth taught, wisdom lives in paradox, in mystery. And if truth is alive, how could it ever be frozen? Jung noticed that spiritual maturity begins when you're comfortable with not knowing. Think about it. Children need answers to everything, but adults learn to live with mystery. The Hermetic path sees clinging to certainty as the death of wisdom, because it shuts the door on possibility. Isn't it curious how the more you insist this is the way, the less room life has to surprise you? Imagine walking a spiral staircase. You never see the whole path, only the next step, yet you trust it leads higher. That's how the soul moves, not in straight lines, but in spirals. Certainty demands straight roads, but awakening invites you into the winding climb. And each curve reveals a horizon you couldn't predict. Doesn't that sound more like life than the rigid scripts we're taught to follow? Here's a short practice. Sit back and take a breath. As you inhale, imagine holding tightly to a stone labeled, "I must know." As you exhale, drop it into a flowing river in your mind. Watch the current carry it away. Notice the strange relief that comes when the weight of having to know dissolves. Wouldn't it feel lighter to live with wonder instead of with walls? If this feels like the freedom you've been missing, hit save on this video so you can revisit the practice whenever certainty grabs you again. You'll be glad you did when a tough moment comes and you remember, you don't need all the answers to move forward. Because sometimes not knowing is the only way to grow. And doesn't that open the door to something even more radical? Because once you drop certainty, another illusion sneaks in, blame. The ego trades "I know" for "it's their fault." It preserves itself as a victim, pointing outward instead of inward. But Hermetic law says the outer always mirrors the inner. So, if you're ready to leave the illusion of certainty behind, are you also ready to quit the game of blame? Blame feels powerful at first. It paints you as the innocent one, the victim of life's unfairness. But underneath, it locks you into the same prison forever. Jung saw it: the moment you quit blame, you reclaim power. Because pointing outward keeps your hands empty, while owning your role puts the brush back in your grip. Doesn't it make sense that authorship begins when excuses end? Thoth called it the law of correspondence, as within, so without. Outer conflicts mirror inner wounds. If you keep attracting betrayal, maybe it's echoing a buried distrust of yourself. If every boss feels oppressive, perhaps it's your own unclaimed authority begging for recognition. The mirror doesn't lie, it only reflects. And if the reflection is ugly, isn't that your invitation to paint anew? Consider how much energy blame wastes. You rehash arguments in your head, tell stories about villains, gather allies to confirm your version. Meanwhile, the person you blame might be asleep, untouched by your rage. Who's carrying the poison then? Releasing blame isn't denial of harm, it's alchemy. You stop drinking the venom and finally let the wound heal. Doesn't that feel like sovereignty? Let's try something simple. Recall someone you still blame. Close your eyes, breathe in, and silently say, "I release you from holding my power." As you exhale, picture their shadow fading while your own light expands. Repeat 3 breaths this way. Notice how your chest feels after, lighter, freer. And if a part of you resisted, isn't that proof of how deep the chains go? If this practice stirred something, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone who keeps replaying old stories, because they need this reminder too. And if you're still here, it means you're hungry for more than surface talk. Stay with me, because what comes next is one of the biggest hidden traps seekers fall into, and almost no one admits it. Curious what it is? It's the bypass of humanity itself. Many escape into spirituality to avoid pain, cloaking denial as enlightenment. They meditate not to integrate anger but to erase it. They preach oneness yet run from their own desires. But awakening isn't escape, it's embodiment. So, are you ready to see why quitting bypass is the doorway to real alchemy? When pain feels unbearable, spirituality can look like a hiding place. You sit in meditation, not to embrace life, but to escape it. You chant about oneness while secretly denying anger, grief, or desire. Jung called this bypassing, trading humanity for illusion. But isn't it strange how trying to skip the human part makes awakening feel less alive? Hermetic wisdom insists on embodiment. Heaven isn't meant to float above earth, it's meant to fuse with it. The Corpus Hermeticum says the mind is divine, yet it incarnates through body and soul. That means your hunger, your tears, your rage are part of the sacred curriculum, not mistakes to erase. Doesn't it flip the script to see the finite and infinite as partners? Think about someone who meditates daily yet avoids difficult conversations at home. Their peace looks polished, but inside they're boiling. That's bypass disguised as enlightenment. Real awakening means bringing that fire into the room and transforming it, not hiding behind incense smoke. So tell me, isn't it braver to embody the storm than to pretend it never rains? Here's a small practice. Place your hand over your heart, inhale deeply, and whisper one truth you've been avoiding: anger, sadness, longing, anything. Exhale, letting it be heard at least by yourself. Notice the relief of not censoring it. That's integration in motion. And if it feels heavy, doesn't it show how much freedom you'll gain by carrying it openly? If this lesson hits home, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next layers of this journey. We're going deeper into the heart of awakening. And remember, spirituality isn't about floating away, it's about sinking roots into earth while reaching for the stars. Isn't that the only way to grow both tall and grounded at once? Which leads us to the next step, the loneliness that creeps in when you stop bypassing and start living truth. Awakening can feel like isolation, like no one else sees the illusions you've left behind. But Thoth warned, what looks like separation is often just fear in disguise. So, are you ready to uncover the secret behind the isolation of awakening? At first, awakening feels like stepping out of a crowded room into silence. Suddenly, the conversations that once thrilled you sound empty, and the places you loved feel foreign. You wonder if you're broken, or if you've wandered too far. That loneliness isn't punishment, it's initiation. Isn't it true that silence often comes before the deepest songs? But there's a danger here too. The ego hides inside isolation, whispering, "You're special because you're alone." Thoth warned against that pride. It turns solitude into a throne. Real maturity isn't cutting off the world, it's returning to it consciously. You learn to connect without merging, to love without losing yourself. Doesn't that sound like the balance you've been seeking? Think of a hermit who avoids people to stay pure. They may escape drama, but they also escape growth. The friction of human bonds is what polishes the soul. Jung saw that individuation doesn't end in a cave, it ends in community, tested and tempered by real relationships. So, isn't true enlightenment less about isolation and more about integration? Here's a practice. Next time you feel lonely, don't scroll or escape. Instead, breathe slowly and imagine a thread of light extending from your chest to someone you love. Feel connection without words, without merging, just presence. Notice how the heart softens. That's conscious unity. It doesn't erase you, it expands you. Wouldn't it be powerful to live that way every day? And here's the community moment, comments. One word: connection. Drop it below and let's see how many lights weave together here. Because even in this digital space, we can practice conscious community. And if you're still with me, like this video, it's a simple way to keep these conversations alive and to tell the platform you want more of them. Now that you've seen the illusions, from approval to isolation, you understand what spiritually awake people secretly quit before rising higher. But this isn't the end. It's the beginning of walking without masks, without cages, without fear. So, are you ready for the opening that ties all these threads into one? Now you see it, awakening isn't about adding more, it's about quitting what was never you. Approval, specialness, masks, certainty, blame, bypass, isolation, each one was a chain disguised as light. The moment you drop them, you don't lose yourself, you finally meet yourself. That's the turning point where life stops being performance and starts being presence. So here's my challenge: don't just nod and move on. Choose one chain you've carried the longest, and quit it today. You'll feel the weight lift faster than you expect. And when it does, notice how the world mirrors your change. Awakening isn't theory, it's action. Which chain will you release first? If this struck you, hit subscribe now and turn on the bell, because the next layers go even deeper, and you don't want to miss them. Like this video if it gave you clarity, and share it with someone who's secretly tired of pretending. You never know who's waiting for this exact key. And remember, every time you leave a trace of your journey here, you're weaving this community tighter. So comment your word, your connection, and let's build a circle where silence speaks louder than noise. The journey doesn't stop here. On the end screen, you'll see the next video. It reveals the hidden step seekers almost never talk about, the one that turns awakening from theory into power. Click it now, because the path only deepens from here.